Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grev, and welcome once again to another episode of the Red One Reds podcast. I am your host, Grev, joined as ever by my co-host, Jace. How you doing, Jace? You all good?
Yeah, good. Relaxing Sunday. No football. Bit bored, so twiddling my thumbs, wondering what to do. I've just seen myself in the camera. I shaved my beard and my mustache off, and Jesus Christ, I look like 5
Very
years old.
youthful. Looking very youthful.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not.
I did watch a bit of football. Nothing too exciting on the football front, but you're joining us here on a Sunday. Obviously, there hasn't been any Arsenal, but what we are going to be doing, this is going to be called the Window Watch, and we are looking through some of Arsenal's potential incomings over the month of January, which may likely be none, but we're going to have a look today at the strikers. So if you haven't joined us before on this channel, please, we do welcome you to the channel. Please do like and subscribe if you get the opportunity to do so. We recognize that about 80% of you who watch these videos are not our subscribers, and we would really appreciate the help and support on our channel. Right, we are going to start, of course, by doing the music, because I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to stick that on and then we'll get straight into it.
Saka. Saka! That is a diamond of a goal! It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent!
This is my club. Fucking love this football club.
Henri. What a goal! Gabriel Martinelli! He's scoring for Arsenal!
Right, now the music's out of the way, I'm going to do the actual thing that I was supposed to do, which is start the episode as we always start the episode, which is the Rip Wrong Review. It's where we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening at the moment, where your head's at in the footballing world. And Jace, you're going to go first. So give me your review for this week.
Timber's back. Timber's back. Did you see it? Did you see the video of him on the grass?
Yeah, tears in my eyes.
It was lovely. Did it make your heart throb a little bit?
It did get me excited. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I was watching it. I was like, screw it. Just get him back in training now. Get him on the bench. I want him playing at left back in 2 weeks' time. God, I've missed this guy. I still believe that it's going to be epic. I know. I can't wait to hear all the haters laugh me off. But I think that he looks so good in preseason. Him with Gabriel and Saliba just makes you lick your lips. So that was my happy moment of the week. And hopefully he's not as far away as they're saying he's going to be. I'm hoping it will be sooner. Based on that, he looked solid in that video. I know you can't take much from it, but it looked good.
I mean, I can't. It's got to be a month, surely. You don't want to kind of move him in too quickly and risk reoccurrence of the injury. It's also a big injury, so he's going to have a lot to come back from. But it doesn't stop. Obviously, we do have a problem at left back anyway. And right back in some cases. So you're right. Trying to get him back as quickly as possible is certainly something we're going to need to do.
Yeah. I mean, the way he was moving after such a big injury, I mean, it's good signs, right? So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Nice.
Come on then. What's your review?
One word, which is fear. Fear after watching Man City yesterday and seeing Kevin De Bruyne come back from also a relatively big injury and had a 25-minute cameo in which he completely controlled the game and scored an unbelievable goal and another assist to boot in 25 minutes. Just worried, you know what? Like Man City, a second place at the moment. They haven't had Haaland for a while. They haven't had Kevin De Bruyne all season. And I'm just fearful. Man City are just they always turn it on in the second half of this season, and I just don't want to watch them run away with the league this year. And I just got this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach that they're going to. So fear is my word.
I don't really know what to say to that one. Like, I'm the pragmatic one here, because I've said from the beginning, City are just gonna in January start turning it on, and then they're going to just storm the league. It's just how we know how they work. So it's not like there's any surprises. The question is whether we can as well, right? Because we could argue that maybe we've not And we keep saying maybe we're doing this similar thing this season, but we've got injuries mounting up. We've got other challenges. But yeah, I'm expecting just City to do what they always do now. It's down to us to see if we can compete and challenge with the same level on a consistent standard to the end of the season. But you know where my eggs are? They are in the Champions League basket, because that's a knockout and it's up for grabs.
Yeah. I'm not going to say anything on that front. I really don't want to dampen your spirits, Chase. I will say though that we talked on maybe a previous pod of Arsenal coming out of second or third gear, and maybe I think I asked the question of you, what if that was fifth gear? What if that was sixth gear? And I'm hoping I'm wrong, but you're right in telling us that like there's still a lot of this season to go. We've still got a lot of players to come back, and I really do hope after this winter break that we come back with a bit more vigor, enthusiasm, passion, and something maybe a bit different, because I think that's what we're going to need. Which might lead us on to there's something different. Could be a striker in January. Firstly, before we go into the players that we've picked to kind of have a little look at and a bit of a scout review of, I'll ask a question to you quickly, Jace. Do you think that we're going to do any business in January?
Well, one person we haven't actually put on our list is coming around today on Twitter, Benzema. And he's possible loan signing.
I saw that, yeah.
Like loan signing for Benzema, would you take it?
We've been linked to Benzema for over a decade. I swear there's always been some tenuous links being made, and I know that he's had some problems. He's in the Saudi league at the moment, right? And I don't think he's turned up to training a couple of times or something along those lines.
Not since 2023.
Yeah, there you go. So I would take him, obviously, because he is once that bandage on that hand is out and he's on the pitch, he's probably scoring.
Yeah, I'd take him in a heartbeat.
But would we do any business? Do you think we're going to do anything?
Well, that's a possibility of a loan signing, and I think that's more likely if we're going to keep our chalk. Is that the right word? Fresh for powder. That's the one. The powder fresh or dry for making sure we're financially compliant with the rules and spending big in the summer window, which I think is more the likely outcome.
The big boy summer.
It's always a big boy summer now.
It was a big boy summer. I mean, having a look at. So I'm gonna share my screen. So for those listening on your podcast provider of choice, where have you been? Get on YouTube and watch these videos because they are infinitely much better. You can witness Jace do the Macarena, amongst other things I think in the past that we've seen. There you go. He's doing it just for you. Right, here's my screen. Sharing it. The first player we are going to look at is Brentford's Ivan Toney. And when I said big boy summer, you can see it right here. He is a tall, big lad at 6'1". He's 27, and he's probably going to cost us somewhere in the region of 80 to 100 million, I suspect. Maybe cheaper in the summer next year, I would envisage, but the likelihood is if we were to go for it now, it's probably going to be in that region. On the screen, what you'll see here is a bit of a scouting report taken from FB Ref, an absolutely fantastic website that compares players. It's absolutely unreal for data. Basically, anybody on the red is in the lower percentiles of how they compare to other players, and in the green, they're going to be better. Now, obviously, in the count of Ivan Toney, this counts for the last 365 days, which is obviously slightly skewed because he hasn't played football for... How long has he not played football for? 8 months, is it?
Yeah, it's about 8-9 months now.
Yeah, so this is slightly having 4 months of data, which is strange to see so many green bars still in there. But still, I did put some stats in the top right-hand corner for his Premier League statistics just for us to kind of have a look at, because he does have some quite really incredible statistics in the Premier League. And I've also put a comparison chart for other players in a similar statistical vein to the player. But with all that on the screen, I'm sure, Jace, you have some views and some conversation points that you'd like to talk through. So go for it.
So I did a prep work with the strikers that we're going to be looking at. I spent about 2 hours watching YouTube last night and going through all of these players just to either remind myself or familiarize myself with the ones that maybe we don't see week in, week out. With Ivan Toney, I look at him and I think, really, he's a bit of an all-round package in regards to that strength and that speed, that ability to muscle off defenders. He also has that brilliant link-up play. I've seen him get plenty of assists on the Brentford highlight video that I saw. He's always in and around the box, which does remind me a bit of Eddie. So he is a poacher and he will be in there for those balls across the box. The only observation really is kind of watching the goals that he scored last season was there weren't that many headers. And I think as Arsenal fans, we'd be, expecting him, and given his height and his stature, to be getting headers. So that's going to be interesting. Have we set ourselves a false expectation because of, how tall he is and his figure, that he's going to maybe add something to our arsenal? No pun intended. And actually, we are fooling ourselves. I think also there's the question of what condition does he come back in? What does this second half of the season look like for him? And that's going to really be a big proven test to see whether we want to spend big in the summer on a player like Toney. And I think he's got now 5 months to prove himself, hasn't he, really?
Yeah, I think he'll put himself a little bit in the shop window. I think he's going to play his first game if he comes straight back into the team next weekend. And he has, any of the videos that I've seen of him in keeping fit over that break period that he's had, he's looked no indifferent to what he looked like before. Strong, physical. He looks really, he's just a big, tall, imposing lad. And that's a lot, as we look through a lot of these profiles in strikers and in midfield, that's kind of the archetypal player that Arteta is looking for. Someone physically dominant, someone big, tall, and strong. So I don't think he'll lose a step. This is not like an injury. Just maybe some of the physicality of the game might be somewhat lacking, I suspect. That you can't replicate that on a training ground.
So you just think he'll dust off his boots and kick off where he left off?
I could see him scoring straight away, if I'm honest. I know I think he played for the under-23s, and I think he scored a hat-trick for Brentford's under-23s, and I just don't see him missing a step. It's like riding a bike. I think he'll just take to it. I don't think he'll miss out. I think I agree with everything that you said. I don't think that the only thing that I would say when we're looking at this player is that his contract's going to be up in 2025. So the Brentford are going to probably not sell now. I think we both kind of agreed that it's likely that if they are going to sell and we are going to go for this player particularly, the summer is going to be when we do it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they could get themselves involved in a bit of a relegation battle. They need goals, don't they? So they ain't giving them away.
Yeah. I mean, looking at this player, and we'll talk about some of the players later on, but Toney, he's Premier League proven. As you can see in those stats in the top right, he is scoring pretty much every other game for Brentford. And I do think in our system, he's going to eat up goals. I'm interested, actually, when I looked at a few videos, and as you did too, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, right, Jace? A lot of the goals that I've seen some of these players score are on the break. They're in counter football. They're in transition. There is a lot of space in between the lines when these goal scorers are scoring goals. And if you've watched Arsenal this season, none of that exists, or at least we haven't seen a lot of it.
Yep. I definitely have seen what you've seen in the videos as well. That did cross my mind. I think there's a couple of players I'll talk about who I think will fare better in those situations than others. And I think Toney probably would be one of those players that fares better than others because he's muscular, he's good in some tight spaces, and he's Premier League proven. So I don't think it would be as hard an adjustment for someone like him as it maybe would be for, a striker coming from Spain.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. You know what you're going to get with Ivan Toney. I do think, ignoring a lot of the stats on the screen at the moment, just because they are across the last kind of calendar year, and or not calendar year because that'd be 11 days, an actual physical 365-day year. So there's not a lot of data to pull from. One of the biggest things that did call out to me was a comparison to Olivier Giroud. But you said he's not very good in the air from your kind of eye test, Jace.
Well, I'd love to know how many of his goals are actually headed, but watching the goals, there was basically a video of all his goals and assists last season for Brentford. There was only I think I can recall one, maybe two max head. There wasn't that many headers, and maybe there were more that he creates that just didn't come off and I didn't see in the highlight reel. But that was the. For we don't watch Brentford week in, week out. Obviously, we see a lot of Premier League highlights, so we see more Toney than we do of other players we're going to discuss. But yeah, that was the one thing that was missing for me.
Okay. I mean, I would
And
say
actually,
his. Go on.
so I was just going to say, the comparison with Olivier Giroud is maybe, I think, more his link-up play.
I mean, I was going to call that exact thing. From what I'd seen, he's really good at link-up play, really good at combinations, really good at pinning centre-backs down and kind of holding up the ball. Similar to Jesus, but just feels much more imposing and much more physically dominant than Jesus. And so some of those attributes that Arteta likes, those duels in midfield that he likes players holding out, like Toney wouldn't shy away from those and would be very, very good at them.
Yeah.
The one thing I was looking at, other than the stats that I've shared on the screen, so last year, obviously, Ivan Toney did have a full season, and he beat out the likes of Salah, Rashford, Wilson for goals last season. I looked at Rashford particularly because I know he scored today, and he scored a really good goal today. But he hasn't been that great this season. And last season, he was incredible. But having Toney beat out him as well as Mohamed Salah for the Golden Boot race, only faltering, I think, to Erling Haaland is quite a feat in itself, I would say. So he's certainly got his scoring boots on.
Yeah. No, I think so. And I'm not going to be unhappy if he signs for Arsenal. Put it that way.
Okay, so Ivan Toney, one for the list. I think we'll start to compare players and see where we might think we might end up as we go through this. Our next player that we're going to look at is Dusan Vlahovic, who plays currently for Juventus. He's 23, 6'3", and would command a fee I've put down between 50 and 70 million pounds. I might be a bit higher than that. I reckon I might be a bit shy on that estimation potentially.
I'm not sure. Juventus aren't exactly in the best financial situation, are they? So
agree.
You kind of got them by the barrel.
True. So, Jace, you've had a little. Do you want me to go first? You?
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I think we should alternate it. Let's
let's alternate. And yeah, I mean, he's an impeccable finisher. His statistics on the screen are showing that he's got a really good shot total, really good play inside of the box. He thrives in like open play, does a really, really good job, and has really, really good pace, which I think, having some of the playmakers in front of him that we've got in Martin Ødegaard, Bukayo Saka, etc., I think he would benefit from having some of those. Compared to Ivan Toney, one of the things I looked at here particularly was his age. Ivan Toney's really got this is his last big move. If he makes a move, this is the last big move, and you're probably going to get, one good contract out of him. With Dusan Vlahovic, if he makes that move and is very, very good, the likelihood is you're getting his best years. In a similar vein to Declan Rice, you're going to hit them when they get to their peak, and you're going to have them for the best years of their career. And that's something that, we kind of need. In a similar vein also to Arsenal at the moment, in some of the ways that we've been playing about luck. He had a pretty poor season last year. And I read into it either statistically and the eye test from the videos and looking at it. Was he a good player in a poor side, or was he a poor player in a good side? And I would kind of lean on the former. And I do think that going into our system, he shows promise. And I think he has the attributes that Arteta looks at, but he is, for me, like an out-and-out 9. He won't necessarily do some of the other things, and that's why I think Ivan Toney maybe could or might be better at in comparison.
Interesting. So that's interesting. You say that he won't do those other things, because, like, for me, he gets us goals and he gets us all kinds of goals from what I saw. I think there is a confidence that he would fit in. He would do those other things because we already assessed him and we already went big on him before, right? There was a confidence there. But for me, like, the thing that kind of stands out is that he never took us as a team seriously. If you can't get excited from speaking to Mikel, or even having you and your team open-minded enough to have a conversation with us, it's probably not the type of player I want at the club. Like, you actually are hearing always a lot of rumors of him, like, wanting the move because Juventus just are not what they used to be. But for me personally, like, you had your chance, you blew it. Like, the ship has sailed. Like, for me, I think it was his agent, right, that was baiting. It was just baiting to get the Juve move. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not into that. Like, disrespect the club.
Yeah,
no players bigger than the club.
Move
on.
You say Arteta holds grudges. We talked about that on maybe in previous pods, so there might be an element of that here too.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Like he's a outstanding player. Don't get me wrong. I watched the video and familiarized myself with what he's done at Juventus because I, saw what he did at Fiorentina, but hadn't stayed too close to watching what he'd been doing at Juve, especially as Juve haven't been as prominent in Europe as well recently. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're still doing it. You're a solid striker, and clearly we think you're good enough because we wouldn't have gone in for you the first time round. We wouldn't have gone big on you, but players bigger in the club, and I just got the feeling if you're going to have an agent that's intervening with the club and maybe a player, I don't know if he has an ego about him or not, but even if, I just don't think what's happening would be in the best interest of Arsenal, and so I'm not interested. Move on.
All right. Would you be interested? I just looked at some of the forward comparison players, and I mean, look at some of the talent in that list: Lewandowski, Erling Haaland, Lukaku, like. His profile, his goals, his output are very, very similar to players that are world class. And it's a hard thing to say when the striker market's a hard market to look into, that you can buy a player at this kind of price range and get that kind of output. This is Kai Havertz price by comparison.
Well, if he wants it that bad, he can change agents, can't he? I get what you're saying.
Be in a bonnet about this agent thing, Jace.
It was. I was listening to a number of pods at the time in the news and guys, Ornstein and Gunnar Blog and things I heard through the Athletic. I remember back then, and it was just, it just didn't sit well with me. Like, don't get me wrong, I'd take him right now. I would, but I don't feel comfortable about it at all. Interesting. Also, just looking at that comparison list, number 5. Florian Balogun.
I wasn't sure if did Toney have that comparison before? I'm just trying to look. I don't think he did.
No,
he didn't. So yeah, I mean, interesting that we already shipped off, but I think there was elements there of we knew what we were getting. There was an element of a good price that we maybe not as good as we thought we could get, but we certainly got an okay price for him. I would say that some of these players as well come with an element of, like, I don't want to hark back to The Simpsons, but mystery box. There's a classic episode where Homer gets offered a mystery box, or I think it was money or something else. And he takes like a boat, I think it was. And he took the mystery box. A lot of these players feel like mystery boxes. Like you say, we don't watch Brentford week in, week out. We certainly don't watch Juventus week in, week out. But there's an element of, but imagine like that kind of like player in our system, and some of those goals in a YouTube comp that you see. It is just like that, right?
It is. Yeah, that's the thing. You can watch a YouTube comp and see only the best bits that get you excited, but it doesn't always show the whole truth, right? So
yeah, 100%.
Mystery box. Interestingly, like I'm looking at some of the strikers in that list as well, like Lukaku. I'm like, he's past his time a little bit. And Mobley, like Jesus, he was playing at Dortmund a few years, like quite a long time ago. Like, so some of these players have been around a while.
Yeah, and you don't want to look at who's number 1 on that list either, Jace. Although he did score an absolute banger today. Absolute unreal goal he scored today.
What was the final score? I didn't keep an eye on that.
It was 2-2. So a good result for us, pretty much.
We'll take that. Yeah, we'll take that.
Happy with that. Right, let's move on then. We're going to go on to our third player, and probably the one I know the least about, and maybe you might be the same. It is Borja Mayoral from Getafe. He's 26, 6 foot, and would command a very, very small fee of 20 to 30 million. How many YouTube comments did you get at this guy, Jace?
It's quite a few, actually. I guess like my notes. So what I've said here, I've just called him the financial fair play option. That's ultimately what I've called him. I think he looks like a quite well-rounded player from the clips that I saw. You could see how he would get goals in the box actually onto cutbacks, which is something that we like to do, especially with Martinelli. Like you can see he gets a lot of those in La Liga, and you do in La Liga, right? Because there's a lot more space in the wide areas for players and wingers to run in and do those cutbacks. It's exactly how we play. But if that's all he's got in his game, that's a bit of a concern, because Arsenal, as we've seen recently, can't score that way at the moment with the doubling up on our wingers. My question though really is this guy really for this price a first choice striker? Like I don't think he's actually solving our problem. Like he just becomes another striker in the rotation. And I'm always concerned when we take strikers from La Liga. I think for me, like Perez still sits in my mind when we brought him in under Wenger, you know. They don't always perform strongly and they take a long time to settle. And I think we're a much more physical league. So if we are going to bring a player from abroad, I feel a player from Italy where there are hard defenders, or Germany, for example, I think are going to stand more of a chance. So I think he's a financial fair play option. I wouldn't even be surprised for it to be his agent because he's having a hot season in La Liga, kind of making noise. Because yeah, I don't see. I don't. If it was a loan, which it isn't going to be, right? Because clearly Getafe are playing really well this season, and they're going to keep him. They're not going to sell him in the middle of the season, or loan him in the middle of the season. So I just, not for me. If I'm honest, I don't think this is a realistic option.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly agree with you. The one thing I read when I was reading through a lot of this was he's only one goal behind Jude Bellingham, who is currently, I think, the top scorer in La Liga, which is quite, there's been so many plaudits and everything landed at the feet of Jude Bellingham, but obviously his age and his profile and the position he plays in, etc., is a different kettle of fish to Mayoral. Yeah, like you, I'd see a lot of these links. When a transfer comes about, there's a few different reasons why a transfer could come about. Some generated by the club, some generated by a player, agents, and this certainly sniffs of agent doings in trying to drum up some interest, trying to drive up the price and trying to get some eyes on it. Like I say, his age profile is not where I would expect us to be purchasing from, and likely would get one more move. I don't think he really suits us. Like you say, he thrives, from what I could tell, on open space and open play, something you're not going to get a lot of breathing time in Arsenal's system, and a lot of teams that play against us in in low blocks. I would say he's very technically sound. From what I could tell, he kind of demonstrates an ability and versatility in his play to do different things in different ways and can fit different kind of systems. A lot of the reading that I had done kind of shows that he has a deep understanding of the game and can fit into different coaches' minds and different ways of playing. That is something that, we've seen players come in, and we've talked a lot about having to wait to see if they can fit into a system. I don't think this player necessarily would have to wait as long, but I just can't see them being better than what we have, I think, is the point I'd make.
Yep. I completely agree. We need someone to come in and hit the ground running quickly and hard, and I don't have confidence in this particular option.
Yeah, I mean, the stats also speak for themselves a little bit. I'd say he's probably having a very good start to this season with Getafe. Hasn't before. There could be an element of luck, of fortune, of the players around him, of the competitors not necessarily performing at the level they expect to play at. Lots of different factors that could be, hamming up those numbers a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to probably I don't know. I think is my current front runner. I'd be interested where Jason's head's at. It's Victor Osimhen, who is the current forward for Napoli, 25, 6'1". I think he just had a release clause put in. I could be wrong. I think it was just over 100 million.
I'm not actually sure, but I've also not seen the stats. Like, you've done the research and putting these stats together, right? So he is not my front runner, and I'm interested because I've not seen the stats on who my front runner is. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to be looking at these stats and comparing when my front runner comes up. Look, I have no doubt, based on like doing a firm watch of this guy, that if chances come to him, he's taking them. He is just so. The word I'm looking for here is he just punishes teams. He gives nothing. Like, they make a mistake, he is taking them to the cleaners. My question is, though, I look at some of the goals he was scoring, and again, are we willing to adopt our style of play to have someone like him in the side? It's not quite clear to me exactly what his style of players and how that fits in with our, Odegaard twist and turning, Saka at the byline kind of twist and turning kind of play. Like he seems to be someone that likes to be running through on goal quite a lot. I also think the fee, it's going to be an astronomical fee, right, to get him out. And given our financial fair play constraints, do you even see that happening?
I mean, I do. We can spend bigger next summer once the kind of financial year is closed, the amortization has happened, and we're back. We're going to have some money, and we're going to have some outgoings as well. Don't forget, there's going to be a lot. We still have a lot of dead wood that we need to remove. So maybe dumping it all on one player, like a Declan Rice a la last season, might be maybe few and far between. I'm not saying it's out of the question. It's difficult, but it's not out of the question for me. Any striker we get from this list or otherwise, it's still going to command a fee of somewhere between 50 and 100 million. Easy.
Oh, absolutely. But if you get a player for 60 million, you can probably afford a 40 million
DM or something,
or a right back or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, he's got the ability to score all kinds of goals, right? I saw he was scoring headers, tap-ins, as I said, direct runs with strong finishes. So the hype around him is really clear. I just don't know. Here's the other thing I made a note on. Unless it's Mbappe or Haaland, I don't feel comfortable spending that much money on a non-proven Premier League player, a la Nicola Pepe. How many mistakes have Man United made? I don't know about Højlund. I think he's probably gonna, if he's given the shot, he'll be okay. But there's you know what I mean, the big money moves from Europe that just don't come through.
Yeah. And it's like I say, maybe it's a big gamble at that, from those different leagues. You've already said it about Spain. And I do feel that Italy is maybe a bit more of a physically imposing kind of league by comparison to La Liga. But I get your sentiment for sure. For me, so one thing I was reading about recently. So Alan Shearer did an article for The Athletic, and he kind of said, this was just post the Arsenal-Liverpool FA Cup game. And he probably had a look at Ian Wright's Twitter, because he would have seen, I think he said, we need a killer. And this is exactly what Alan Shearer wrote. He said, they need a killer, all right, a cold-blooded finisher whose first and only instinct is to pull the trigger. Now, the case for Osimhen is pretty simple in that case, right? He seems to have all of the attributes of any striker that's currently available to do the business. If you look at all of those stats on the left-hand side, he's in the 94th percentile for non-penalty XG for goals. He's currently in the 89th percentile for non-XG penalties. Shots on target, loads. He's in the 97th percentile for all of the shots in total. Statistically speaking, everything, if you were looking at this green bar and saying that green is good, points in the direction that he's an incredible finisher and an incredible player. Super big presence, really fast. Likes to run into space, which is something we have certainly been lacking as of late, runners and running into space. And he hit double figures for goals in 5 seasons with his current club Napoli and other clubs before them as well. I think that we've been guilty of being a bit ponderous on the ball recently. If you see the Havertz chance that he had against Liverpool, we just do this thing where we kind of sit on the ball and fluff our lines and don't take our opportunities and don't strike first time. He does not share in that. He is a true out and out number 9 who will take opportunities as they come and will hit the ball when it's at his feet. And so for me, eye test, statistically speaking, he is currently my front runner. But like you say, a very, I think people may pragmatically look at this and go 60 million on Ivan Toney, who's already playing in the Premier League and already scoring every other game, versus a somewhat unknown quantity in the Premier League for almost double the price, albeit statistically better, is a difficult choice to make.
Yeah, it is. Well, he's only getting to Chelsea if he doesn't go to us anyway. So,
well, that's another play there, right? It's like if you don't get him, somebody else will, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of history. So, but
Perhaps.
hindsight's an amazing thing.
You have to take risks to win, don't you? But
Yes, indeed. I mean,
we
right. So I'm assuming that your front runner is our next player, which is Joshua Xerxes.
no, it's not.
It's not okay, right?
It's not. But let's talk about Xerxes. Do you want to go first? What have you seen?
What have I seen? I think he has a really high ceiling. So this is, I think, the youngest of our options at the moment, and he's obviously playing in Serie A against some other quite physically dominant kind of teams. And although he's not scoring heaps, he seems to be really involved in working for the team. He was a real standout performer in the Eredivisie when he was younger. He seems to be quite an XG kind of monster. So he seems to get a lot of opportunities and have a lot of opportunities, but he's maybe not as scoring as many of those opportunities. We've talked about Tall Boy Summers. Once again, a very physically tall player, good in the air. I've heard and read that his touch is Bergkamp-like, is what people have written down. I don't know if that's just a comparison because he's Dutch, and that's where the comparisons stop, or whether it's more to it than that. But he's got a great touch. He's really elegant, really good on the eye. And like I say, I kind of feel at this age, and being that good at this age is also, it can go one of two ways. It can be amazing and you can become the best in the world and you can do all of that. I think when I was looking at the data, the number one player that it was compared to was Alexis Sanchez. And I know that's not the Alexis Sanchez at Arsenal. It's obviously the one that's playing Inter Milan currently. But, I do believe that probably Alexis Sanchez is probably one of the best players of the Emirates era so far. And having that comparison and that type of player in our system, if we could have prime Sanchez, Alexis right now in our system, man, we would be scoring goals for an absolute fun. And if Xerxes is anything like that, I'm there.
Mate, before you brought Xerxes up, there was one player in my mind. I was like, screw it, bring him back, just see what happens. And that was Alexis Sanchez, because he asked to come back in the summer, right? He asked to come back.
I can't forgive him for the piano, Jace. Can't forgive him for the piano.
No, you can forgive him. Why? Because sometimes people are going to make mistakes. Until they've made that mistake, they can't realize how badly or how wrong they went. And he knew he went wrong. I think he asked after like day 2 to come back to Arsenal, and he was told he wasn't allowed by his agent. So, Alexis, I would take back, especially for 6 months, given how we are at the moment. But we're not here to talk about Alexis. So I think I've called Xerxes the next Vlahovic. That's what I've called him, because I think he could be the next big thing. And getting him from an Italian club before he goes to a Juventus or Napoli, which is like probably the next thing when you're playing for Bologna. It's like those are two of the clubs, particularly that well-known strikers in Italy go to. I think that wouldn't be a bad thing. What you said, he's happy to run at players. I noticed in the videos he loves a nutmeg. He did so many nutmegs. So I don't know if you've seen it. So many. He has that kind of quick turning ability in tight situations, and he definitely looks, as you said, like that different kind of profile in regards to size and stature, especially compared to like Eddie and Jesus. So definitely what I think Arsenal fans want. And he has an incredible directness in how he drives forward. I don't know if you saw that in the videos. Like, he loves to run and loves to be direct, which I just think is something that we're missing. Jesus showed signs of it last year, but he hasn't showed any signs of it, in my opinion, since his injury. So we're missing that. But again, it comes down to a bit of style of play. He definitely also, that physicality, that height, that directness, and the speed that he has reminds me of Haaland. The only thing I didn't see in the clips was aerial abilities. And so that was the thing I was like, again, I'd like to know his stats for headed goals. But I think he's not my top runner, but I'd like him, or I'd be happy to take him. Definitely a gamble at the right price. I'd definitely put some money down on him. He's not my top runner.
Okay. There was from the stats as well, one thing that did surprise me, you kind of semi-mentioned it, not scoring a great deal, but also it works hard for the team, and he has an incredible playmaking ability as well. Like he's getting involved in passes, progressive carrying. Something that, for the moment, us breaking the lines is something we've not been great at. We're missing a passer. I know in a future pod we're going to talk about midfielders, but Arteta does like players that can play for the team. And statistically speaking, a lot of the attributes that Xerxes possesses is what Arteta would look for in a striker.
Yeah, I think so.
So I've shown my hand on Osimhen then. So show your hand, Jace. Who's your front runner?
Solanke.
I don't even have a thing on Solanke. I was going to do it, and I didn't do it. I know I did, but I didn't make it because I just thought that the links weren't enough. But let me get rid of that, and then you can talk me through Solanke.
So look, the first thing I saw in the videos I watched of him, and again, like I see Bournemouth in the highlights, but you don't necessarily pay that much attention to detail. But there are several things that really he impressed me with. First thing, the pace and the way he runs. It reminds me of Thierry. I can't compare him like direct for Thierry Henry, right? I'm not going to do that. But it was a lovely sign and indicator that all Arsenal fans look for. He has a great ability to run onto through balls exceptionally well. A poacher in the box in front of goal, again, we expect that from a striker. But the thing for me that he had that a lot of other players that I was watching videos of didn't have, aerial ability. There was a couple of headers in the 3-2 win for Bournemouth against Forest. I don't know if you saw that earlier this season. If you haven't watched those headers, go back and watch them. They are exceptionally good headers. Exceptionally good. I was drooling watching those. He definitely, knows where the goal is. He has great interplay. You could see how he'd work with Odegaard too. Age, 26, perfect age, coming into his prime. He has the profile and experience to play in England as well. So there's less time for him to adapt. I think, in my opinion, he is at that development stage where he's about to take his next level into his prime years. And I think we'd be getting him at the right time in his career. So yeah, I've made loads of notes on this guy. Like ability to stand tall and hold the ball up, backs to the defender. I just think he's also not going to be as expensive, I don't think, as Toney.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask. You just think that there's not a lot to split them, I suppose, is what you're saying, and maybe there is a bit of recency bias in there. Like you've seen Solanke a lot more than you've seen Ivan Toney, but if you're getting him for 30 to 40 million,
age as well, right?
So yeah, was it a year difference between the two of them?
2
Maybe
years.
2 years difference
2 years.
between the two.
That's competing for 4 Premier Leagues opposed to maybe 2 or 3 Premier Leagues.
Yeah. I mean, I just a quick look at the statistics because I didn't do enough research on Solanke, but statistically speaking, yeah, he's got a really good eye for goal. Yeah, he's got a really good involvement in the game in terms of kind of dribbling and successful kind of take-ons of players. Obviously, he scores quite a bit in a Bournemouth side that isn't super creative as well, and so you would assume that putting him into a system where there is more chances, he'd score more goals. I will say this, Jace. Does he take us to the next level? My answer is no. Let me put it into context. So we talked about incremental games.
Strikers that take us to the next level.
No, I suppose. Well, I think with Ivan Toney and Dominic Solanke, you kind of know a bit more of what you're getting.
Yeah.
With the other, like I said, mystery box all over again. You kind of, you don't know what you're getting, and so you could and could not. I don't think, knowing what we know about both of the two players that are playing in the Premier League right now, that they take us. We talked about incremental gains in previous pods about David Raya versus, and they're not there. Do either of these two really elevate us beyond Gabby Jesus when he's at his best?
I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that Declan Rice took us to another level, and we knew about him.
And he cost 105 million. Just saying.
Well, then go for Toney then, if that's the case, and spend the money.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, I think out of all of them, I think Toney is the most likely.
age doesn't make a difference, no?
So I did put a lot of thought into this when I was doing the kind of scout reports, and you're right but then I'm just looking at Solanke now. So I think you said 2 years, but I'm sure it says Solanke here is 26. Yeah, he's 26.
Yeah.
And Toney's 27.
Soon to be 20.
So it might be. It might be. I'm going to hark back to an old Arsenal Twitter of he's 28 before he's 29. I see where you're going with this. But if that was the case, I think Arteta's profile is certainly much more. It's either 22, 23, and they're going to move into their prime, or they're 27, 28, and they're beyond it. We don't really, from what I can tell, we don't sign a lot of the players in that, like, or at least starters. You look at Trossard. I don't know how old. I think Trossard's probably 28. I would guess. He's going to research live on air. I'm going to say he is 29. So, like I said, I kind of envisage them that he doesn't think of them as starters.
No.
But I don't know. Maybe if you know, like say we're diving Toney, because you know he's prem proven, scores a heap of goals. I'm going to get him for 3 years in a similar vein to like Robin van Persie when he went to Man United. He was in his twilight years, but you know he's going to bang. You know he's going to bang. I wouldn't necessarily say that Ivan Toney is Robin van Persie, because Robin van Persie to me was one of, if not one of the best strikers that we've ever had. He was incredible, but he just was at the wrong time. I don't know, but I see where you're going with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it will be Toney too, is the answer. But I wouldn't. I'm happy with Solanke, but and that's why I said he's kind of where I would put. I think Solanke is the strongest candidate by age and profile and value for money. However, if Toney, we pay top dollar for Toney and then he bangs loads of goals, you're not going to see me complaining.
Well, it's like Declan Rice all over again, isn't it? No one is splitting hairs over the fee at this point in time because of what he does on the pitch, and hopefully, what you don't want to do is Osimhen and see that 100 sank into him and then him not bang, because then questions are going to get asked and think people are going to be stressed.
Yeah, and the other thing really is, out of all these players, which one are you confident is going to be able to hold up Virgil van Dijk?
I mean, to be honest, this is what I did have a note to say that I think Ivan Toney, I think, is probably one of the only players that I've seen occupy both Gabriel and Saliba.
Yeah,
I think
that game last season.
Yeah, it was last season. I think he's the only player I've really seen do it. Even Haaland against Saliba when we played City wasn't that it. I think we just saw. I mean, yes, Salah roasted Zinchenko, but I don't think Salah gave much trouble to either of Gabriel or Saliba. So yeah, on that point, he is gold dust.
He remember that game at the Emirates. We were there, weren't we? And we were very impressed. To that point, I think I was like, sign him now. He was good.
Yeah, maybe. Well, if we had him, we would have been eating our words at this point in time, Jace, because he wouldn't have played a minute of football.
True that.
Yeah. Right. That is it then, unless you've got any other business that you want to go through in the parking lot, Jace.
Nothing in the parking lot. I mean, I think we're back. Crystal Palace away, or is it home next week?
Crystal Palace at home on Saturday lunchtime kickoff.
What are you expecting in regards to team based on African Cup of Nations, Asia Cup, injuries? What are you expecting to see?
I think Zinchenko comes back into the side at left back. I know he had one game out. Kiwior didn't shower himself with anything great in the game against Fulham. I don't think Partey is going to start. But man, I am salivating at the idea of a Partey, Rice, Erdegaard trio that from every pod I've ever listened to and read, they've never played together or started together. They might have come on together as a substitute. Yeah,
they definitely played together.
Which I thought was incredible. You know, in pre-season, Jace, we talked about like this in loads of pods. That was your preferred three, even with Havertz signing. I think that was the one that you'd wanted. So I'm not too sure on that one. I still feel that Havertz and it's Palace right at home. This should be a game that we should comfortably win.
Don't say that, mate. Don't say that.
I've said it now. It's out in the open, Jace. And Jesus is back in full fitness, so I'm assuming he'll go back as the number 9 as well. You think anything different?
No, I think that's probably what Mikel will go with. But I would echo what you said, which is I'd love to see the Partey, Rice, and Odegaard trio with Havertz in the 9, because I still think that that's got options. I think that would be tasty. A big central core. Then you're talking a tall central core all the way through the squad. I think that would do something different. I think, as I said, previous pod, we are building a physical, tall team now who's technically good, and that's why Toney would be a good addition as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, looking through all of these players, and just to let the viewers know, hopefully in the midweek we'll come back with a midfield window watch as well. So we've got a short list of players to go into that potential number 6 role, which is likely to replace Thomas Partey, I would imagine. But across that list and this list, one attribute that stands tall, no pun intended, was the height. A lot of physically imposing, tall, dominant players. That fits Arteta's down to a T. There was a lot of outcry when we were looking at Onana, and we're going to look at Onana in the pod next week, Jace, about we don't need 2 physically dominant midfielders, but we've had it in the past.
Oh, we do. 100% we do. Like, you don't want to be in a City situation where you lose a Declan, or you lose or we lose Partey again, and you have City losing Rodri and who they're playing. They're having to fill their creative midfielders in the midfield and really with no defensive presence, or you got John Stones stepping in.
I think that's part of the reason why we did well against them. They had, I think it was Bernardo Silva that played as the pivot.
Yeah, he didn't have a great game
in that game. It's part of the reason why I think we did well against them.
Yeah.
Right. Parking lot over, episode over. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Rip Roaring Reds podcast, where we did the window watch, looking at our short list of strikers. Jace, if you listen to it on your podcast provider of choice, what do we encourage our listeners to do?
If you could give us a 5-star rating, that would be lovely. Reviews appreciated. We'd love to hear feedback. We'd love to know how to improve also, but 5 stars if you wouldn't mind.
Lovely stuff.
And YouTube, Gref?
Yeah, I think we should. Well, I've already encouraged you to like and subscribe, but if you haven't already done it, do it again, because it really does seriously help out the channel in building this community of rip-roaring Redders, if that's what you want to call them. I don't even have a name for that yet, but I'm sure we'll figure out in the future. Like I said, join us in the week. We'll be talking about midfielders, and then join us again at the weekend. We'll hopefully be talking about Arsenal's victory over Crystal Palace.
Nice one, guys.
Right. Nice one, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.
Come